Cool. All right, this should be working. Hello, internets. This is a first 360 degree virtual reality simulated look inside of a Paradigm Shift London meeting. So say hello to the internet's Paradigm Shift London friends.
Live long and prosper.
Awesome. So Paradigm Shift is all about being able to create physical space where people can come together and practice talking about things that we don't normally get a chance to talk about, such as spirituality, metaphysics, philosophy, quantum mechanics, life in general, really. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you a little bit of a simulated look inside of this Paradigm Shift London, Ontario, Canada meeting, and with the idea of encouraging you to be able to create a Paradigm Shift community where you are. So check out paradigmshiftcentral.com for more information, and the simple ways as to how we'll facilitate this is that when somebody has something to add, they'll just put their hand out into the circle like this, and then I'll help facilitate it. So you could be help facilitating a circle where you are, and we're going to pick a random word from out of a book that we have right now as a way to sort of generate a discussion. So kind of similar to divination, I'm just going to flip this open to a random page, and then we'll get the discussion started. And again, this is really just about practicing having conversations so that we can take some of the practice and the experience that we get out of this and be able to expand it into our other experiences outside of this community and into our bigger communities, into the world, and be able to help shift consciousness as you can do as well. So let's see, what word do we got right here? So, okay. So mudras. No, I'm gonna flip to another page. Let's see. This may work. Okay. Here's a good one. All right, here's a good one. So this is talking about mediums. So I'm just going to read the definition of what this says for mediums. Is like a dictionary of words, and then this will generate the topic for discussion. So mediums. Well, what are they? There are two types of medium: the backstreet fortune teller, who might somehow, through a kink in her mind, be able at times to receive revelations from the other side of death. These mediums are untutored, erratic, and not constantly mediumistic. They are in the same position as the savage witch doctors who has savage witch doctors who has certain psychic powers. He cannot say why, nor would he be interested in knowing why. So it goes on a little bit more, but let's just sort of talk a little bit about mediumship and clairvoyance as like a general topic. So I think that's an interesting thing. Channeling. So I think that's an interesting topic that for a lot of people has sort of been almost like an introduction to some paradigm shifty type stuff is psychics. We see stuff on TV, Sylvia Brown, John Edwards and stuff like that. It's kind of been in the mainstream, but is there some truth to this psychic abilities? Can we actually see things beyond what just exists in our brain? So just my sort of thoughts on this, and then we'll pass it around. I think one of the things that really makes it interesting for me is that I think we exist with a series of filters on our reality, and as we pull back these filters, we can sort of begin to access more information, more knowledge. And our brain, we aren't just our brain. Our brain is like a radio that is receiving a signal, and the information is really the signal, and our brain is the transmitter. So we can tune our radio, we can tune our frequency to be able to access other pieces of information. And the best thing that I can think about is the idea that if we're capable of being psychic some of the time, then what's preventing us from being psychic all of the time? That is a really interesting topic for me. So I think as we evolve our consciousness, we can begin to experience more psychic experiences within our reality, everyday common experiences like synchronicity and things like that. So psychics, mediumship, clairvoyance. What do we have to say about it? So Bob, go ahead.
Not specifically about what you're addressing, but Lobsang Rampa.
Yes, the book title, yes.
Been around for a long time. Actually, he's dead. I read a few of his books when I was young, because he's been around that long. Originally a plumber's helper from England, moved to Port Erie, Ontario, said he was a reincarnation of a Tibetan Lama. I have not heard any of the... More recently we have contact with Tibetans, and nobody's acknowledging this guy. And if you read his stuff, the part you read was partly racist and really ignorant, where he talks about the ignorant savage witch doctor who doesn't know shit.
Well, I think he was sort of
Paraphrase.
quoting
It's like
society's
about-
perspective
yeah,
on it.
totally.
Yeah, he wasn't. That wasn't him saying
That
that.
wasn't his opinion.
Wasn't
No,
it? It sounded like him
I just
saying
read it
that.
weird. No.
Okay, because I have read a few of his books. And after a while, I got
triggered.
really disgusted.
Okay.
I personally do not believe that he was a reincarnation of the Tibetan Lama.
Right.
I think he had a vivid.
Right. Yeah, so to put some context in this is like a book about some guy from America who went to live amongst the Tibetan monks. But there's speculation is about how awesome this guy is, but maybe we'll save that for another circle discussion. So, okay, so
I would
thank you,
rate
Bob.
Love Saying Rampa way below Sylvia Brown.
Okay.
And Alex Jones, yeah.
That's good. That's good to know because I hadn't
Fun
heard all
never
much
ends.
about it. Okay, so bringing it back to the conversation of psychic mediums and things like that. What do we think about it? Go ahead,
I don't
Daniel.
know,
And sorry, let's just try and talk loud just so the mic is there.
it's only like fairly recently that I've really looked into like channeling and stuff, but I find that there's a lot of charlatans in that whole field because people want to have contact with dead relatives and they want to have like answers given to them. And if you're good at bullshitting, then you're going to be a good medium, basically. And I've also been reading a lot about, like, specifically channeled sources from extraterrestrial sources, like a lot. And I've gone like pretty far back on the internet, in the history of the internet. And basically, I've just found it's become like this folklore. It's almost like pseudo-religious folklore of people are just like taking the good parts and discarding the bad, and it's just becoming a more refined sort of charlatanism. I mean, it could be true. People could be channeling these sources, but I'm inclined to be really, really skeptical when it
Yeah.
comes to any sort of medium
And
shit.
For sure. Sorry, Tom. Yeah, that's a good point.
I like to add on to what you say. There are some like there's like even when you hear information from anybody, whether it be a mystic or doctor or whatever, see if it rings true to you. Don't listen. Who cares if he's a millionaire? Well, you know, if he's a psychic millionaire, whatever. It's just a label, right? But if you don't feel it in your own body, and it's like, oh, I don't feel that to be true, then it's not true. But if you feel, oh, that makes sense, and you usually know, you're like, oh, like you'll have those moments like, oh, I like what he's saying. That means it resonates with you, and it's like that's the truth for you in the current moment where you need to be.
Jeremy, then Robin.
Sure.
Alright, then.
I was gonna say I'm pretty skeptical of every claim, any group of people. Whenever, like, because culture actually works in like a very charlatan kind of way. Like someone tells you, like, oh, you're never gonna get a job until you go and get a degree. So most people get good jobs, don't get them from a degree. They get them from the people that they know. So that's charlatanism, and it's like sometimes it's like I agree with you, but I'd also say like that charlatanism is on every cultural level, and
Our society is a Ponzi scheme.
yeah,
Get rich quick scheme. That's right.
so it,
Pyramid scheme.
It's easy to pick on like the visible, like I think with psychics, because it's been culturally rejected, it's easy to see the charlatans in a psychic community or whatnot, but it's more difficult to see the charlatans in a banking community because they don't want to be seen or whatever. So you just have to, I think you have to be skeptical, kind of like what Tom said. I think focus feeling in your body, and that's something, to be totally honest, like cannabis has taught me to just completely turn off my mind and just focus on how things make me feel. And I find that it usually leads me to where I need to be, usually leads me to the more logical thing, and it almost always leads me to some sort of weird psychic thing as well. So it's just kind of like, they all kind of get wrapped up together. But yeah.
Robin first.
Robin, then Jeremy, and then
Shoot, I lost my train of thought.
was it about psychics?
No.
Did I know?
No. You also have to be very skeptical about, because we already have an idea that we want it to be true. And so we go for what feels right, but it's not necessarily always right. That's why it's so important to be skeptical in everything, I think.
Yeah. Jeremy, go ahead.
Is this camera on?
Still, yes.
Well, one thing I've learned from my esoteric studies over the years and different, going to church from church and group to group, and they all have something valuable to say. Some people's channels, some people have inspired sayings, and I'm not saying necessarily what they say is wrong. And you really, you, like Robin says, you have to be a walking question mark. And you have to question everything. Anyone who tries to say, I am the descendant of Christ, or I'm an archangel, and I'm here to guide you. Watch out, okay? Anyone tells you that they're a master, or they're some kind of ascended master, or they're an enlightened one, and you're supposed to listen to what I have to say, watch out, Bear. Listen to what they say. Now, don't ignore them. Don't have to. You can read the books. But your real guru is your master within, your inner being, and you do that by quieting the mind. You do that by quieting the mind, meditation, quiet down the emotions, the chatter in your mind. You meditate within for an hour. You you quiet the mind, you relax, you listen to the inner voice, and then if your master tells you to read a book, or look at a movie, or read some kind of, or listen to some song, everything synchronistically works, and you will get the exact knowledge that you require. But you do that first by quieting the mind. The Master Jesus taught about throw your nets on the right side of the boat, meaning throw your thoughts on the right side of the brain. I'm not here to tell you what truth is or what not, but the point he was teaching, he used allegory to teach meditation and quieting the mind. And when you do that, you get the higher consciousness. And you're your master within, your inner being will guide you. And if there's a brother or a sister who has wisdom, they'll come to you and they'll guide you. But only after you consult your master within.
Bob has this in, and then I'll go, and then Jeremy. Go ahead, Bob.
On the, so this is like an agreement with you and with you, I think. There's a guy named J.J. Krishnamurti who was originally picked by the founders of
Theosophy?
Theosophy,
Yeah,
yes.
Theosophical.
Raised him up in the tradition, taught him all this stuff, and they wanted him to be the avatar. They believed that he was the avatar. And he grew up and rejected it. So it was like they put them in kind of a bind, because if he is the avatar, you have to believe what he says, and he says he's not.
Whoa.
Spent the rest of his life
Krishnamurti is pretty awesome.
just traveling around the world, just talking about what he had learned and the conclusions that he came to. And he always said, do not follow me, right? And people would say, oh yeah, I've listened to this and I can tell you're a real Buddhist, or you're a real Christian, or you're a real, and he'd say, no, you didn't hear, right? And it doesn't matter what. And similar to what I quoted Buddha as earlier, he said, one of his books is called Think on These Things, and it's just, he puts out ideas, and he said, think about this, question everything. He said, reject everything you believe, because if you only reject and question the questionable parts, you're assuming a whole bunch of stuff is okay, and that's a mistake. That's probably a mistake, and you won't know until you actually question it and search it. So in my own case, for instance, just as an example, I was really enthusiastic about the idea of anarchism, which is not anarchy in the sense that Luke used it, which is kind of a way that mainstream politics has framed it because they don't like it. But you talked about, this is what I wanted to believe, and so you're saying it, so I know you're right. Right, that's company. Yeah. I was really enthusiastic about the concept of anarchism, of personal responsibility, but community support, arriving at decisions as groups rather than have the leader telling you what to do, because then you've got to vote. But the more I looked at it, I found holes in it and things that weren't going to work. So it's to question the things that you believe. It's easy to question the stuff you don't believe in. Question the stuff you do believe in, because that's where you're going to go astray.
Yeah.
You know, believing what you want to believe because it confirms what you want to believe. This is not a path to truth.
Yeah, I think I like what you're saying, Bob, because I'll just do this and then Bianca, and then probably just a couple more points, and then we'll stop recording on the video. But you know, one of like the really interesting things that I like to think about, and it kind of ties into what we were talking about before we were recording this, but it's the idea of, is mystery more important than knowledge? You know, and sort of think about that for a second, because again, it's like the mystery that drives us, and sometimes like it's important for us to always recognize that there will be mystery. To assume that there's no mystery is to pretty much like step back in our active role as like cosmic investigators, sort of thing. Is sort of like again, this idea of you know, one of my friends said it this way: see everything, believe nothing, because it took them to remind me this for me to really get it. But they're like, you know, sometimes we'll believe simply by believing something, it prevents us from understanding something beyond that belief, because like our beliefs create like walls, they create like structures, and we box ourselves in either consciously or unconsciously through these beliefs. And so like as we begin to peel back the beliefs, we begin to see that, you know, there's a field that we can run through, sort of thing. So I think beliefs are, if anything, something that we can recognize as like being more malleable yet still useful in terms of constructing visions and understandings of reality. You know, like you can say like, okay, I'm going to take this belief and use it like a pillar to like move it here, and then I'm going to take another belief and move it here, and then this is going to build a foundation for me to understand this next level. But then like as I get that, I'll be like, oh cool, that's cool, and stuff like that, right? But then at the same time, I'm still allowed to like dissolve that without needing to depend on those pillars being there, sort of thing. So use beliefs as a tool to sort of bring into your reality to help you expand your understanding, but without having to become dependent on them at the same time. So go beyond your beliefs, and then like we've had other discussions about this before, but yeah, like that was just kind of the idea. Like there's a time and a place. I mean, beliefs and ideas are, oh man, okay, I don't want to, there's, anyways. Words. So, okay, but yeah, mediumship and stuff like that, going back to that, yes, absolutely. Like, I think like psychic abilities are real, psychic abilities are possible, and the interesting thing is that maybe our belief in thinking that they don't exist is what prevents us from being able to experience them. You know, which I think is really interesting, because it's one of those ideas where
A lot of people
instead of some people say, you know, like, oh, I have to see it to believe it. Maybe it's the other way around. Maybe you have to believe it to see it. So but this is the tricky part. It's believing it. This is recording. It's believing it, but then letting go. So letting go of expectation. So it's just like, I 100% believe that psychic abilities are possible, but I'm not expecting it to happen. And then in that like absence of expectation, the universe allows it to like pour water, and the water goes where it needs to. So just a few simple metaphors. Okay, so Bianca, Robin, Dan, and then we'll finish up the video.
So as you said, and it's just about, I think, accepting the idea that it is possible, because if you're throwing negativity onto the idea and you're doubting it, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And it quite frankly, if we're thinking of the laws of attraction and manifesting your destiny and otherwise, or just the power of positive thinking, if you're going to be thinking negatively, it's not going to happen. It's not.
Or you're not going to know.
Or if it's not going to manifest itself for you. Speaking from personal experience, I feel like usually the first idea that pops into my head, whether I like it or not, is usually the right idea. So I met a young woman in Toronto, and basically within 5 minutes we just had this conversation, and she's like, wow, I can't believe you told me all this stuff. Like, how do you know this stuff? And it was just because like I just kept getting just ideas about her, and as soon as I got them, I would tell her without any doubt in my mind in the past few months. And it was really hurting her, and it was something that she needed to really needed to move forward from, and still acknowledge, but kind of move on from. And she said that her mother had died two months before. and she said, and I asked if it was like an illness, and she said, yeah, it was cancer. And then I said, lung cancer, and she said, yeah.
Wow.
Wow, exactly.
Yeah, and she's like, wow, it's, you know, it's kind of. I laughed when I heard this because she said, well, it's glad that you're not talking shit. I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, usually, you know, the real ones don't charge. And I'm like, well, I'm not doing it for a business. I'm just, you know, I think when you make yourself open to feeling and accessing that certain, I guess you can say, vibration, then you can kind of get in sync with it. And you can be able to tap into it nicely.
Yeah, listening to the higher voice requires like silence from the little voice sometimes.
Chatter.
Yeah. We're more than just us. Like there's the bigger us's that give ourselves information as well.
Can I add something?
Rob and Dan had their hands up first, but
Yeah, go first.
okay. So Rob and Dan, then Caleb.
About the belief and what you were talking about, how it's being open to the possibility of something. I believe that's definitely key, and a lot of scientists, I think, have an issue of being like, I only believe what I see and what's quantifiable, and that is definitely a challenge that needs to be overcome, I think, in the scientific community, because it's always, I think, having a critical mind is about being on the edge of believing and not believing constantly about everything. Being open to the possibility of it, but not being convinced completely by anything. And if, like with you, something comes to you through being open to all these things, then maybe take a little more, I don't know, a directed approach towards that, but definitely. Sorry, go on.
I'm glad you actually went back because I forgot that we went on that tangent about belief. But yeah, when I was younger, I like stumbled across a philosophical gold mine where I realized I can choose what I believe. And like it was fairly easy for me because I was raised as an atheist, so I didn't have very much programming in terms of like the big questions to break down or whatever. So that's great, you know, that's like, if you choose what you believe, you could just like cognitively choose to believe something to just mollify your more base fears and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So, cool, takes some work. But going back to the whole medium thing, I totally believe that we're psychic. Like, completely. It's just the, you know, even if it's just like a subconscious perception thing that is easily explainable with scientific methods. Whether it's not even this whole like interconnected spiritual thing, I believe that we are able to take in a whole lot more information than we cognitively take in, and like we take in a lot more and process a lot more than we ever actually think about. And this could be psychic. It could just be like a cool thing that we do. The problem I have with mediums is the appeal to higher power. That's where it becomes problematic. It's like, yo, I get this feeling off you, I can like guess these things and they're correct. That's like psychic ability. But if it's like this god from like ancient Egypt is telling me these things, then it props up this thing where it's like you're supposed to believe that person more because they're appealing to a higher authority.
That's a good point. Yeah. Calum, you had your hand out.
I was just gonna say, if everyone meets you, there's a reason why you're all here, right? So, I guess people consider themselves light workers and whatnot. Well, ask yourself, what can you do to help someone learn more? You know what I mean? In everyday life, not just in the group itself, but what can you expand on and just teach people? You know what I mean? Because that's the ultimate goal. If you're doing your goal, you're gonna get to where you want to be, I guess, right?
Can I add just one quick,
Yeah.
it's a quick comment? Actually, funny enough, reasons for being here, I had Dan flip a coin for me. I was like, heads home and tails here, and it landed on tails. So I'm not sure if I believe it.
Carry that up.
purpose.
Sounds like
I'm
his
glad I
random
came.
page that he keeps opening too.
That's a
Synchronicity.
I'm sorry, what's your name?
Dan.
Dan. Okay, yeah, I heard that before and I forgot. And why not feeling you're an atheist? My father was
Aggravate.
neither an atheist nor a believer, and which left me really open. And I remember when I was 7, and we didn't go to church at all. This is in England. And he sat me down one day and he said, "You're going to go to Sunday school because we live in a Christian culture and you should know something about it." Right, and I think we went, my sister and I, we went twice, and then it just kind of didn't happen anymore, which was fine by me. A bit later on, when I was in Forest, Ontario here, when I was a kid, my friends and I would go to various Sunday schools in the summer, depending on whether they had cookies or some of them were giving away books, but nothing else rubbed off. But you were going back to the psychic thing, and when you believe in it and whether it happens. If you don't believe it and an amazing coincidence happens, the non-believer says, that was just a coincidence. And if you're a true believer,
It's just a miracle.
and it can be just some little coincidence, and every little coincidence is, it's psychic, it's psychic, it's psychic. You know, if you believe it, you'll see it everywhere. If you don't believe it, you won't see it anywhere. I have no idea.
We create our own reality.
But I think you can.
Good night, guys.
well, they're just running over to Shawarma
Oh.
to tell them to stay open because we went a couple minutes too late.
Sort of like what Robin was saying, it's get on that edge of it, whereas I don't necessarily believe in it. I have no reason to particularly believe in it, but it could be. I have no reason to particularly disbelieve it. It's maybe it seems
Yeah.
unlikely at this time, but hey, I've been wrong before,
Yeah.
more than once. I'm open.
Yeah, experience I think comes down to it. Jeremy, and then okay, I'll just add one more point after that, and then we'll wrap it up. So Jeremy, go ahead.
Okay, I just want to, even though I'm very quiet, I'm not skeptical, but I'm very cautious about the concept of spirits or guides or like what's the terminology, channeling. However, I do have private experiences where. What has happened? Basically, I believe that I was. Well, what happened was basically I was consulting a horoscope. What's it called? She was a
Tarot reader.
no, not tarot reader.
Astrology?
Astrologer, and
Astrologer.
and she required that I find my birth time. And I didn't know where to go, and I was looking on the internet for my birth time. So I did some kind of a little wacky I wouldn't normally do because I consider myself a fairly scientific person. But I asked, spirit guides, help me find my birth time, and I did some chores at home, and I asked my mom, do you know where I can find my birth time? And she doesn't know, but she eventually found it. I had the card where I was born. So I don't know. Whatever you can say, whatever it is, it's a coincidence. But I do believe that we all are born with spirit guides who guide us, and we can ask for favors, but they cannot interfere if we do not believe in them. That there are angels and there are spirit guides who will, whatever you want to call them, non-corporeal entities that are with us, and they're benevolent, and they will help us if we just ask. So
I was going to make my point from earlier about just people in general.
Go ahead, real quick.
I think it's my experience. It's something that you have to experience for yourself to understand, and it's the if you are to follow it, the scientific method. Scientific method is not a set of beliefs. It's not a dogma. It has no preconceived notions, and that's the whole point. And it actually comes from existential philosophy, but if you can just follow with your own experience, your own direct existence, you'll find that external philosophies and ideas of any sort are not good to that state, and so you might as well just continue to experience things before the plan for itself.
Yeah.
That's what I think. That's what I think.
I what C.S. Lewis
And
says.
that direct experience is
C.S. Lewis
good.
really believes in the power of stories and how we can weave our own realities through what we choose to believe in, and that's I really believe in that power as well. And
Definitely.
Yeah.
The choice of we choose what we want to be
You don't have
important
to be
to us,
delusional
right?
about it.
No,
but we
just
can
choose a path.
Yeah.
It's not
It's called the reticular activating system in our brain, if you want to get kind of science with it. It's basically like, it's like, I mean, this is a poor example, but it's something that people would understand in an analogy quite quickly. Like a bomb, like how they have bombs that basically can follow a target, like based on heat and so on, right? Like, so it's this, our brain will do the same thing. So whatever we decide to focus on or believe or whatever, it's gonna follow it. So that's why, like, if you've ever had the experience, like, you know, you bought a particular car or outfit or whatever you bought, and suddenly you see it everywhere. It's like, that's what's going on there. It was already there, but like you weren't really thinking about it or focusing on it. So I think like that can be really powerful. Like it can be bad, but it can also be good, right? Like
We're creators, right? We're
You're
creators. of
manifesting your desire
Yeah.
on the spot.
Short one, Bob?
Just going back to what Jeremy was saying and you about the scientific method and so on, and that there's, in school I really loved math, it just it made sense. But what I really appreciated in grade 10 was when we got into, I guess it was the beginning of geometry, and maybe algebra, I don't know, but we had to start out with the, there's 3 or 4...
Cast, tan, like,
Sokatoa.
Sokotoa.
Oh,
yeah.
Sokatoa. Yeah.
Wait, no, it might be something else.
There's like...
Platonic solids? No?
Pythagorean theorem.
Oh, I love
It's
that.
like yelling things at it. Like, no, not that.
I mean,
Psychic.
math is like the ultimate rational, logical science, but you have to start with these 3 or 4 things that I forget the name, but they're assumptions which cannot be proven. And everything else is built on it.
Called axioms.
Axioms.
Thank you, just in time, yes.
He's dead.
Okay, good. Okay, cool. So we'll go to shawarma in a second. So cool. Okay.
But that was all.
That's it? Okay.
Yeah, just you have to start making assumptions that you can't prove, and everything else is built on
Yeah.
a huge pile of cards.
That's a good idea. Yeah. See, I think assumptions are important because like assumptions are things that we can build our story around, you know. And again, like really seeing it as a story, and you know, you can assume things into your own being. You can be like, but then again, you bring it. Assumptions can lead you towards experience, and once you have those experiences, regardless of whether you're calling it an idea or belief, it's an experience, and your experience is your own form of truth. And I think like that's really what is important. You know, like somebody can tell you 1,000 times over that lucid dreaming is real, but until you experience it for yourself, you can't say for certain whether or not it's actually real because like it hasn't come in front of your reality. Same thing happened with when I saw that UFO. So like I didn't believe it until I saw it, and then it was like, oh, guess UFOs are real. So anyways, Leah, do you have a quick point?
I just think that our whole experience, we're like phoenixes in our whole experience, you know? Like, we make these assumptions, we build our world on them, it leads us to experiences, and then we fall apart and we're able to rebuild on top of those experiences into something new that brings us into the future, and like, totally.
Yeah.
We
I
could
like
talk
that.
for hours.
Just when you think you got it all figured out, something reality hits you on the head.
I guess they're expecting us.
Yeah, we're heading over there in a minute. Yeah. I like that idea of like thinking of like ideas and experiences as having like a nutritional value that are like are fertile for new ideas and new experiences. That's kind of cool. So yeah, like in that sense, it's good to constantly like be taking in things. But again, you take it in with this idea of like, you know, if it tastes good, swallow it. If it tastes bad, spit it out. Or, you know, sort of like one vibrations, resonation thing. So yeah, it's a choose your own adventure story, right? So
Life's an adventure.
Yeah, like I was just gonna say, yeah, like definitely like going back to the medium things, like there's a lot more to this reality that we can experience simply by being open to ideas. So I think maybe that might be the word. So it's an idea between being open and closed, and you can choose which doors you want to open when you're ready for them. You know, so you can say like, oh, I'm open to the idea of psychic stuff. And then from, again, my idea is that as you sort of pronounce this to the universe will respond, and it will start bringing those experiences into your reality. So again, I really like what Jeremy was saying, and I think that's an interesting point, that with like the higher spirit guides and stuff, I've heard that before, that like it's only when you invite those experiences into you that they begin to show up. So use that as like a way to manifest your reality. Start inviting specific experiences into your reality. So yeah, okay.
Positive experiences. It's very important that you have high
Whatever,
vibrations.
yeah, and again, you know, like negative experiences are positive experiences in the big
They're like
black
teachers.
and white thing. So lots more to talk about, but we'll save it for another episode
Can I
of
just ask one question, everybody? Does anybody know of angel numbers?
angel numbers.
Yeah.
I'm sure people have heard.
I know
of
about
those in
angel
some ways.
numbers. I read them every night. Yeah. I look
Okay.
at it online.
So to wrap up this video, and then we're gonna go to Shawarma and hang out some more and connect as community. So for everybody watching this on the internet,